Hello. So our last lightning lecture of the evening is Rebecca Ariel, Porte, one member of our core faculty specializing in literature and philosophy. So here we go.
So, third time's the charm. My thanks to Ajay for all of this and the introduction, and Susie and Mark and Kim and my colleagues and students, everyone who is here and everyone who has organized this event and who comes and participates in our programs. So these are some notes and queries on poetic logic from this long, strange, wicked book that I've been working on for what seems now like a whole lifetime, but gladly spent in that way. So here are some notes and queries on poetic logic. 1, message in a bottle. Meanwhile, in a train station bar at the edge of a forest, night falling like the punchline to an obscure joke, the Paradisian and the Arcadian are waiting for someone they have never met, whose face they've never seen, whose name they don't know. Perhaps by the time we've finished here, the third, the welcome stranger, will have come to join them. They would like to believe that they are not operating according to a script, and that even if they are, it was written neither by Beckett, nor by clockwork, nor by the calculating gods. It is the Arcadian who is first to express this thought, though they cannot carry it beyond the realm of uncommitted hope. The Paradisian simply asks if it wouldn't be poetic logic to wait just until midnight. That's when the last train's expected, and very likely when the last of the liquor will vanish, too.
Not here.
Like the Greeks, they water their wine to make it last. They have brought the precious stuff with them, for there is no bartender, and behind the bar itself, only a few rusted taps and empty vessels, brimming with cobwebs and cobwebbed with cracks, where the gem spectrum from absinthe to amaro used to gleam. Message in a bottle, says the Arcadian obscurely, inspecting a webby handle of ancient vodka. And then, if the stranger comes, and then the train, would you call that poetic logic or poetic license? Anyway, says the Paradisian, I think we have to act as if the stranger comes. We bought those tickets long ago. Poetic logic or poetic license, you always did take liberties. Heaven forfend, says the Arcadian. You object? Well, then an appeal to earthly paradise. Now, says the Paradisian, you're getting personal. Anything but poetic justice, I suppose. Says the Arcadian, I'll drink to that. Till midnight, then? Till midnight. Who are the Arcadian and the Paradisian? And what do they know of poetic logic or poetic justice or poetic license? What on earth are they talking about, and why? For whom do they wait? Already, though it's only the teetering cusp of twilight, midnight presses close, and there for the moment we have to leave them, with the last of the wine, and the waiting, and the gibbous moon hastening up the side of the sky like a sly silver balloon just escaped from its tether. 2, justice, or behind the scenes. Once, said Thomas Reimer in a treatise from 1678, poetry discovered crimes the law could never find out, and punished those the law had acquitted. The Areopagus cleared Orestes, but with what furies did the poets haunt and torment him, and what a wretch made they of Oedipus when the casuist excused his invincible ignorance. This is, or was, poetic justice, not the easy formula of virtue rewarded and vice punished, to which the term is often reduced, but rather the progress by which a work of art operates, inexorably and without mercy, by its own internal logic. For Reimer, the stringency of poetic justice exceeded that of historical justice, for though historical justice might be content merely to inflict death, and in a religious worldview, divine punishment in the afterlife, Poetical justice could not be so content, needed complete and full satisfaction, ere the malefactor goes off the stage, and nothing left to God Almighty and another world. Nor will it suffer that the spectators trust the poet for a hell behind the scenes. The fire must roar in the conscience of the criminal, the fiends and furies be conjured up to their faces with a world of machine and horrid spectacles. Only a certain kind of moral art, Reimer contends, can show us a universe in which justice, in the sense of the kiss of rule and consequence, is functional, in which hell is not behind the scenes, but staged for us by machine and horrid spectacle. It is worth saying that it is not merely the scene of the hellish that art can stage for us, but too the scene of the heavenly, and that its hells and heavens are embroiled in compressions, amplifications, rejections, and other modulations of the given world. There is an irony here in Reimer's poetic justice pushed to its conclusion. It is only in the unworlds, the not worlds, the almost worlds of art that a truly material vision of justice can manifest, available to the sensuous apprehension of the living, rather than consigned to a deathly afterworld. Though sometimes art is suspicious of its own autonomic, law-giving bent. Porte's remarks of Dante's Divine Comedy, with its contrapasso, its allegorical punishments and equal and opposite actions, reactions, and geographies, that Dante merely pretends to believe in poetic justice. Even in art explicitly committed to a sort of poetic justice, something always eludes its rigors, the blackbird bursting from a vent in the freshly baked pie. Nor is this world, ours, the world of poetic justice, merely one in which the idea of what is poetically just, sensibly designed, has emerged, precisely because things as they are so often fail to work according to what reason wants. Nonetheless, if there is anything of poetic justice alive in us and in history, it is the idea that we cannot go behind the scenes, and that we don't need to. Hell's enough, and heaven's enough, right here. In The Winter's Tale, Shakespeare's Antigonus saves a child from exposure, abandoning it on the shores of Bohemia, a desert country near the sea, at the urging of what may be a dream, or a living statue, or a ghost, or merely a desperate woman fugitive in the night. As the revenant bids, he calls the child Perdita, meaning the lost one. Thou art like to have a lullaby too rough. He has time to croon to the babe, before he is driven away by a ferocious beast. I never saw the heavens so dim by day. A savage clamor. Well may I get aboard. This is the chase. I am gone forever. Later in the play, time itself will step forward to slide o'er 16 years and make a case for the law of poetic justice, the Winter's Tale rules of dramatic narrative, in which a decade and a half can be leaped in an eye blink, in which women may or may not spend years transformed to statues, in which what is lost is found again, in which some things are nonetheless irrevocable. In some ways, the dramatic action is an exercise in how to tell the difference between these things, what can be restored and what we cannot help but abandon. This discerning mechanism of poetic justice we might call, as time does, rather confrontationally, the argument of time. Antigonus, Perdita's rescuer and the animal's quarry, saves the child and gives up the ghost. Unlike the child, he will not return to the stage. Scene, a desert country by the sea, exits and entrances. Now, enter all. Exit Orestes, pursued by furies. Exeunt chorus, pursued by invincible ignorance. Exit Antigonus, pursued by a bear. 3. License, or the truth is the maid. For the kind of beings we are, a world that bent entirely to the dictates of poetic justice, of legalistic logical rigor, would probably be intolerable. That is, it would foreclose the flourishing of its sibling, poetic license. Like the notorious sentence, there is another world and it is this one. The phrase poetic license lacks a secure attribution, though seekers of license have extrapolated its presence in texts all the way back to Aristotle and Horace. Poetic license is related to terms of art like licentia poetica, artistic license, dramatic license, narrative license, historical license, creative license, and the parsimonious license. The Oxford English Dictionary marks some of the odd dualities of this phrase. It can refer both to written permission granted from some authority, or else to the taking of liberties in and what beyond what is reasonable, the licit and the licentious all at once. And in the case of poetic license, which is nothing if not deeply interested in the licit and the licentious, the OED recommends a definitional deviation from recognized form or rule indulged in by a writer or artist for the sake of effect, first used attested in 1530. This might mean anything from deviating from a set meter or rhyme scheme, or the fashions of free verse in poetic cultures that value certain styles over others, to altering historical record for thematic and dramatic purposes in ways ranging from creative anachronism to outright rejections of the facts and states of affairs we think we know, as in works of outright fantasy, as in historical or science fiction, as in imaginative literature more generally. Think of the neologisms of the poet Paul Celan, Schlafbau or sleep yard in a poem of ambivalent menace that occupies the zone where language frays into new combinations at the edge of dream country, a licentious amphibole or straining of language. Think of the Jewish Brazilian writer Clarice Lispector, whose syntax tests the limits of sense-making by bending the customs of the Portuguese language until words seem to invert, their hearts and nerves pulsing outside their luminous skins. Think of the poet and critic Evie Shockley's case for an experimental line of Black poetic innovation, too often dismissed as part of an African-American tradition because its experiments were not recognizably Black, and rejected by predominantly white avant-gardes because they were recognizably Black. All of these instances might be construed as poetic license in the narrow sense of poetry as a specific, if constantly mutating form of linguistic art. But there is a sense in which poetic license also gets at the operations of imagination philosophically conceived, and what it is we are doing when we engage in mental making more broadly conceived. Poetry comes, after all, from the Greek poiesis, which merely means creation or making. However clumsily and however delimited by history in its constitution, poetic license describes the sense of deviating from an established order, even at those times when there is, in fact, no real rule that constrains us, when we have to invent a body of law against which our making can rebel. Its appearance of illicit licentiousness tracks a form of desire for difference, to bring into being what seems to us not to exist, to move from the mood of the realis, things as they are, to the irrealis, things as they are not right now. After a fashion, poetic license names a procedure of how worlds come into being, of how what we know of life can only be known constructively, puerum factum, as the early 18th century philosopher Giambattista Vico puts it. The truth is the main. 4. Logic, or plants making love, vines going mad, resinous trees weeping. In the New Science, Vigo coins the term poetic logic in order to describe the process by which we signify all the different forms of our being. We cannot speak, he notes, the language of Adam in the Garden of Paradise, a divine onomatopoeia in which each name corresponds perfectly to the nature of the thing. We make do merely with the strange traces of this method of perfectly linguistic correspondence, which often inhere in the suggestive comparisons and carryings over of figurative language, analogy, simile, image, and rhetorical trope among them. But for Vico, the most luminous, necessary, and frequent of these figures is metaphor, and the repertoires of images that come of the making of metaphors. From Plato to Hobbes, Locke, Kant, and a slew of analytic thinkers, philosophy has often been among the uneasy allies or outright enemies of metaphor, striving to cleanse its language of the occlusions of imagination. often dismissed as a uselessly embroidered excrescence, muddying up the dream of a purely rational, purely propositional language. Metaphor is, in the new science, the seed both of a singular way of thinking things through, and two, a way of understanding how thought is constrained by the position of the human, by any given human position. When man understands, Vico writes, he extends his mind and takes in the things. But when he does not understand, he makes the things out of himself and becomes them by transforming himself into them. Poised between the sophistic claim that man is the measure of all things and its antithesis, that all things should not be measured by man, Vico notes that our way of entering our experiences of the non-human into the social record often begins with metaphors for metamorphosis, figures derived from the human body and its capacities. Head, he says, for top or beginning, the brow and shoulders of a hill, the eyes of needles and of potatoes, mouth for any opening, the lip of a cup or pitcher, the teeth of a rake, a saw, a comb, the beard of wheat, the tongues of shoes, the gorge of a river, a neck of land, an arm of the sea, the hands of a clock, heart for center. The Latins used umbilicus, navel in this sense, the belly of a sail, foot for end or bottom, flesh of fruit, a vein of rock or mineral, the blood of grapes for wine, the bowels of the earth. Heaven or the sea smiles, the wind whistles, the waves murmur, a body groans under a great weight. The farmers of Latium used to say the fields were thirsty, bore fruit, were swollen with grain, and our rustics speak of plants making love, vines going mad, resinous trees weeping. The philosophical canon is, of course, regardless of cascades of austere protestation, rife with the luxury of figurative language, even in those places most ostentatiously resistant to metaphor, from Plato's caves and celestial horses to the leviathans and talking parrots of Hobbes and Locke. And then there are those philosophers who seem to require the image or the narrative metaphor of the thought experiment in order to come to their most provocative claims. Benjamin had his angels, arcades, and snow globes, Adorno his silver wait-a-whiles and golden nothings, Jarvis Thompson her dying violinist. Poetic logic, the signification possible configuration, is suspicious when the desideratum is a view from nowhere, the exercise of reason divorced from the non-conceptual realms of the senses, the passions, and the material conditions of the reasoners. In the absence of a vision of rational autarky, however, it begins to look less like a kind of maladaptive addiction to error, and much more like the conditions for a dialectical relationship between what we can imagine and what we experience as reality, between what we invent out of and beyond what we know, truly novel alterities, and the actually existing terms of the given world. In metaphor, airy nothings, as Theseus puts it in A Midsummer Night's Dream, are given a local habitation and a name. By means of poetic logic, we become what we never are, have never yet been, but still may be, what Marianne Moore called literalists of the imagination. 5. Ghost apples. Scene: winter of 2019, the late Anthropocene. A farmer in western Michigan sets out to prune his cold-lacquered orchard. As he begins his task, he finds that the trees are decked in ghost apples, orbs of ice that mark the place where the fruit once hung in its ruddy ripeness, the result of torrents of freezing rain where snow had been expected. The farmer makes a rueful joke about Jonna Golds and Jonna Ghosts. But if you could draw close enough to see and hear, you would know how his voice trembles a little on the sibilants, and the hair stands on end under his collar, and the glimmer of the ghost apples draws a little of the vibrant black from pupils slightly dilated with some strong, illegible emotion. 6. The Paradisian. But remember the Paradisian? Who is that? The Paradisian is the one floating between the demands of what is real and what is imagined, whose fidelities are divided between the world as we know it and the world as it could be imagined differently. It is not always a happy no man's land, that little plot of paradise between worlds, but it is often very delicious nonetheless, and the Paradisian chooses it over and over, inasmuch as they can choose anything. At times, the Paradisian seems a practitioner of romantic irony, a mode of impassioned sophistication in which the imagination is discharged from the responsibility of reason, denaturing thought by refusing to face the question of the being or the non-being of its own creatures, of yea being yea and nay nay, as the scholar Eva T.H. Brand puts it. But the Paradisian loves reason's yeas and nays too well to maintain the pose of the committed romantic ironist for long. Nonetheless, the Paradisian knows enough of romantic irony to be and to seem, at irregular intervals, constitutionally unserious. 7. The Arcadian. But remember the Arcadian. Who is that? The Arcadian is the one who has constituted life around the problem of maintaining a form of difficult optimism, an attachment to the world that goes on without them, after their death, and the death of the ones they love, and the forms of the life that they know, human and non-human alike. 8. The Abecedarian. Meanwhile, in a train station bar at the edge of the forest, night falling like a house around a silent movie star, remember they are waiting for someone, the Paradisian and the Arcadian, for someone at a midnight train. Dear one, dear you, a chilly spring evening, and even though we've never met, we miss you as long grasses miss the mistral wind. The station is velveted in darkness, and the Paradisian is nursing a final mouthful of watery wine. The Paradisian is sadly prodigal and has never finished a glass of wine, but this I know you will forgive them. The Arcadian has drunk their glass to the dregs and relished every drop, the bitter, sweet, and sour of it. We have saved a glass for you, a bare inch or so, there in the bottom of the bottle, your personal ocean awaiting your personal ship. You have always been your own message, in your own messenger, in need of no proxy. Quickly, quickly if you can. We think a train is speeding close with the midnight, and this time we plan to be on it. Who will you be when you come to us? Our best guess so far is that you will come in the bells and colors of an abecedarian, a perpetual beginner, the one who says the ABCs, the one who knows how to be here now and how to laugh at our time out of joint. One of us is habitually from the past, the other habitually from the future, though of course we are not entirely creatures of habit. We think you will be wiser than we are. Either way, your ticket is here on the table, and we've been reading Wallace Stevens again, so perhaps you'll manage to save us from ourselves, whatever you turn out to be. That planet on the table. Ariel was glad he had written his poems. They were of a remembered time, or of something seen that he liked. Other makings of the sun were waste and welter, and the ripe shrub writhed. His self and the sun were one, and his poems, though making of his self, were no less makings of the sun. It was not important that they survive. What mattered was that they should bear some lineament or character, some affluence, if only half perceived in the poverty of their words, of the planet of which they were part. Yours, we would like to be yours, we think, a Paradisian and an Arcadian, the whistle of a train in the distance now. And after all, someone comes. It is unambiguously some kind of ghost, cradling in its hands a sort of glass apple, perhaps. It does not seem to be the abecedarian. It does not say its ABCs. Stay, illusion, says the Paradisian. Hail, blithe spirit, the Arcadian calls out. The ghost says nothing, but holds out the transparent apple, blooming with faint, lucent rainbows, but indisputably in and of this world. Holds out the apple and smiles. The Arcadian, well, after all, there is so little time. The Paradisian, well, After all, life is sweet. And the Arcadian decisively bites. A mist of nectar from the apple's flesh springs up. A reel of hesitating laughter escapes the Paradisian, loyal to the earth, however reluctantly at times. The Paradisian, who is raised cavilling to an art of joy, lines their mouth to the place where the Arcadian bit eats of the fruit. The ghost assumes mass and color, form and suit, a local habitation, and maybe a name, though of what kind I cannot at present say. It happens slowly and swiftly at once, as they board the train sliding into the station, as if justice, license, and logic were merely, in themselves, premonitions of the past, histories of the future, poems half remembered in the teeth of the sensuous present.